On today's episode, I am so excited to have Marina Tolentino here. She is a mom, a mentor, a podcast host, a realtor. She has a tremendous amount of knowledge around how do we really time manage well? How do we really get to this place of feeling really good when it comes to theoretically work life balance? And how do we get to this place of just really feeling fulfilled and excited about what we're managing in our day to days? So, Marina, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm so glad to have this conversation today.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. It's been a journey. So it's always great to be in a place to be able to give the advice back that I wish I had at this stage. So absolutely happy to be here.
Yeah, we all need some level of advice. And hindsight is 2020. And so that's why I'm so excited for our conversation. I want to hear your expertise. I want to hear what you've learned. I want to hear your story and hear really what has kind of led you to where you are now with the work you do and what you're passionate about. So if you don't mind kind of diving in on your story, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to start back in like 2011, 2012. I had just gotten married and got into the wedding industry. So I was a wedding planner for 10 years, and definitely it was in like that girl boss era where it still kind of lingers, but it's out there. But it was like boss babe for sure. Like that was the thing. Everyone was doing it. Hustle harder, do more, you got to be the top, got to get published. And that was like the push. I didn't have kids yet. And so it was all consuming. Well, fast forward, we ended up moving to Hawaii in 2016, which is my husband's home of record. So we came back home after the military, and we started a second business, which is a rental furniture. And so we did that through home staging, through events. So we were juggling the wedding planning and now the furniture. And then that kind of evolved into also home staging because I had realtors catching the attention going, hey, we love your designs. Can you put this into houses? So we're like, sure. What is home staging? Let's figure that out.
I love it.
So then we've got the three businesses. And then we also simultaneously started a honey company that just fell into our lap. It was at our family farm, and we didn't realize mom and dad's collection had grown into like almost 300 beehives. So
Wow.
naturally, I was like, well, let's start another company. So at this time, carrying four things on the plate. And we have basically like a 2 to 3 year old at that time. My son was still toddler age. And then fast forward, pandemic hits 2020. And I was like, wow, all of a sudden, we don't need a lot of these things. And it's going to be quite a while till we start to see weddings and events again. So within that first year, just made that transition really soon to be like, I'm already helping people list their homes for sale. Might as well get my real estate license. So with a newborn at that time, I had my daughter January 2020. By March, I was getting my real estate license and already just like hit the ground running. And it's
Wow.
just one of those things where when you build your first business, you're like definitely stumbling and like throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. By the third, fourth, fifth, you sort of get this like groove in and you're like, I know exactly what I need to do to start this thing and get it going. So hit success pretty quickly. By 2022, had doubled my production, multiple six figures. And I was like, yes, like this is like the pinnacle. Like I'm in a leadership position now, managing a team. But my
Yeah.
personal life was like suffering, and mom guilt was so major. Like I remember crying in the office where I am now. This is like our separate bedroom. Just the kids would be out playing and I can hear them and they're like, banging at the door, like, that mom guilt of like, when are you going to come out? When are we going to see you? And it's, no, I have to hit this number or I'm not successful. Like in my brain, it was all about numbers and achievements. And okay, we did 10 this month. We got to do 20 next month. Like there was no ceiling to success.
Right.
So very quickly could feel myself getting to that burnout stage and overwhelm. And it's like, it feels like culture lied to you. Like you finally get that aha of like, wait, what do you mean? I said, I did what all the billionaires told me to do. I did the multi-passionate, I need the 7 streams of income. I do my 5 a.m. morning routine. Like, but these aren't people with young children. And so it really took me getting to that point to be like, wait, I thought I did everything I was supposed to do, yet I'm still lacking and it's not hitting the bone that I wanted to hit. In fact, I'd rather like throw it all away and just spend time with my children instead.
Right.
Like, even if that means going back to 60,000 a year instead of 300 something, like it just was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of soul searching, took a lot of failure to get there and just trying to do it everyone else's way. And then what happened was 2022 got my first assistant. And that was like opening the door to the new me. I was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean I can delegate half of my plate? And they can actually be better than me at some tasks and faster than me. And so that was really like what changed everything to where it is today. So today, like I literally work 3 to 4 hours a day, max, like usually. There might be occasions or like a week that someone needs a lot of showings all of a sudden that weren't normally part of the schedule, but Other than that, like this week, I'm working 2 to 3 hours a week and we're still pacing income. That's very great. And I can choose what to say yes or no to. It's not out of desperation or need. And I homeschool the 2 kids now too, which is also a big mind blow for a lot of people.
Yeah, that is a whole undertaking in itself, a whole undertaking in itself. And I love that story, Marina, of just kind of your explanation of all of the different facets of business you've been involved in, all of the different things that you've built over time, and really what you've had to personally learn when it comes to
Mhm.
what is my definition of success and what do I want my life to really feel like as I'm striving for all these things. I think that's a common thing that we all manage in some capacity, whether we're building a business from the ground up or we're working for someone else or we're really trying to manage our home as women in some way. Like there's just so many facets to this conversation we have to have with ourselves around what does success really feel like to me? And how do I want my
Mhm.
life to feel as I'm doing all of these things I might be passionate about? So, Marina, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, in the journey that you've been on and
Yeah.
your personal story, what were the things that you started to do that kind of went against the grain of this let's do more concept and helped you get to the place you're currently in of more balance and feeling
Mhm.
more fulfilled in your personal life as you're striving for the goals you're working towards?
Yeah. So I can remember, I think it was early 2022, I got my first business coach. I've never done that before out of all my other businesses. And so I was at this point where, again, too many plates at one time. And I was just feeling like a frazzled mess and I had no cleared one direction. And so I needed a third party person to come in and be like, let's look overview here, big picture. What's actually important to you? And I couldn't answer that question because I wanted it all. Everything was important all the time, all urgent, right? So she really helped me get clear on what was actually really corely important, and that was relationships. And my relationships was actually, if you looked at my calendar, it was the bottom of the barrel. And so we totally flipped that upside down. So that was step one, getting third party perspective. And that's one of the things I do today is I help mentor women in that space to be like, this looks great and this sounds great, but actually, how are you feeling about it? And are you even aligned? Because most of us are not. We're way over here doing what everyone else tells us to do. So getting that help was huge. And then again, learning how to delegate, learning how to create systems so that the business runs on its own and not just being the solopreneur. That takes a lot of growth, lots of challenges, and it's going to take more work in the beginning, but knowing that you're going to pay your future self in time, it's worth it 1,000%. So
Right.
big picture perspective, absolutely huge.
I love that. And, I think sometimes getting into that space of enlisting help or enlisting support can be so hard for us as women. It's just one of those things, whether it's business or in the home or in relationships or with our kids. Sometimes this step of enlisting more support feels like this huge hurdle. And I love how you're speaking on that because I think that's a common thing that a lot of us don't always step into soon enough. And it can be this super freeing thing that gives us more capacity to really dive into what are we passionate about or where are we feeling called to spend our time and energy and how can we do that when
Yeah.
we're delegating or enlisting people to kind of help us along the way. So I love that feedback, Marina. I'd love for you to maybe talk a little bit more specifically about just boundaries that have really helped you as you're building your businesses, as you're homeschooling your kids, as you're
Yeah.
kind of switching those gears throughout your day, which we all do. What are the boundaries that you've put in place that you feel like have really helped you with things like time and
Mhm.
just energy and being able to also pour into yourself?
Yeah. So definitely going to the calendar and like creating clear time blocks. That's like absolutely essential for me. So I put in first, it's like myself and my personal time, my family time, all that goes in before business. And so it's not like we're playing this reactivity mode. Anytime there's a new inquiry or a new request, you already have a backbone to kind of go through. And like if it doesn't fit, then you schedule another time. Because before I had all this structure there, it was like willy nilly, sure, I'll bend over backwards for you. Sure, I'll be there in an hour. Like you're constantly just like in this reactive state. But most importantly, it's like if I've set aside time for family time, it means family time. And I know that's really hard, especially for realtors. We're like attached to the phone at the hip and we're constantly working. And I
Yeah.
think that's a lie we can get rid of today. It's 2024. We don't have to bend over backwards for people. If they can't wait 2 hours to call you back or like for you to call them the next morning at 9 in the morning instead of 9 at night, like that's not the client that we want to work with anymore. you know?
Right.
And there's
Right.
really bad reputation there. So your clients will actually respect you for the boundaries that you have. And they'll actually be like I get clients now, they're like, I'm so sorry, you're probably with your kids. I'm sorry to bother you. Like that's the call now I get instead of the demanding one being like, how come you didn't answer your phone in 5 minutes? Just totally different paradigm shift. Yeah, for sure. So time blocking, so huge. Running everything through a filter. Is this urgent? And is this something only I can do? Or is this something other people could do as well? So that's another thing. I don't have to be at every single showing. I don't have to be at every single meeting. Like most people don't realize when I do a transaction with them, I'm probably only going to see you 5 to 7 times. The rest of that is online with my team running like the whole show behind the scenes. And so they think like, oh, we're going to be arm in arm and hand in hand, but it's not just me, it's everybody else. And so just once you identify that clear boundary, you have so much freedom to choose other things. Hmm.
Yeah, I love how you're speaking to the instant messenger mentality that we've all been kind of conditioned into, especially with all of the connectedness and technology that we have, which is such a blessing. But you really have to take that intentional mindset step and say, like you said, that checklist, which is so huge. Like, is this urgent? Does it need
Yeah.
an immediate response? Is this something I can delegate or that someone else can do? Or do I need to put my time and effort and attention into it? And when I do, when can that be? And it
Hmm.
really has to be this mindset shifting that you intentionally create in your process.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you aren't setting boundaries and you're at the will of everything around you. And I love that you're speaking to that. So if we think about the mindset side of that, are there certain things that you practiced or books that you read or a certain
Yeah.
mentor that taught you those things? Like, what would you tell the person that maybe needs some direction on how to take those mindset steps?
That's such a loaded question because it's so much. It's not just one thing you can get. It's like I've read dozens and dozens of books. That's one of my hobbies. I love to read. I feel like for the last 4 years, I've read the most personal self help books I have in my entire life. And so I can't attribute it to one book. I would honestly say you kind of got to dabble through them all. But again, as you're reading them, don't take everything verbatim. It's like chew and spit. That's kind of the method we like to say of like, chew on it. Does this fit with my life, with the season that I'm in? I don't need to apply everything literally. Otherwise, we'd all be crazy people.
Right.
But if it makes sense, good. And if it doesn't, spit it out. And so that's a filter that we use for our whole life, for everything we consume, is just absolutely that. But I would say a lot of it comes with an inner belief of who you are and the skills that you have. And so when you're in the beginning of things, like especially as a new entrepreneur, it's constantly battling that lack mentality and scarcity of I don't have enough. I need every single client. And people can smell the desperation. And then
Yeah.
once you start to get a couple of confidence boosters, you can let that go. But it does take growing through that to then come on the other side and be like, actually, there's more than enough business in the world. I don't have to be competitive. I can be collaborative. And it just takes on this whole different beast in a
Yeah.
positive way. Another big thing with mindset has honestly been my faith development and just trusting on God instead of myself to do it all. And that's something I was going to wrap up this episode with. You had asked for like a quote, and I'll share that at the end.
Yeah.
But we cannot do it alone. Like as humans, we're so weak and so just like feeble to all the things. So my faith has been a huge part of that confidence too.
I love those things. And it's been a huge part of my confidence too, because
Mhm.
at some point, whether that's on a business journey, on a motherhood journey, on a health journey, whatever journey it is, like at some point, you kind of reach this capacity. You reach
Mhm.
this capacity where you say, like, I cannot go any further. This is where my own brain means whatever ends. And now I have to have
Yeah.
faith. Now I have to lean into the process. Now I have to trust what's meant to happen for me. And that is, again, another mindset shift that takes practice
Yeah.
and really like making the choice to lean into that. And so I love that, Marina. Thank you so much for sharing that, my friend.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to maybe speak a little bit, and this is for me
Mhm.
selfishly too. So I'm a mom of four. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm building a business out of my home. This is the first time in 13 years my kids are all in full-time school. So for the first time ever, I have 7 to 8 hours a day where
Yeah.
I can dedicate time for me. And I know that, there are a lot of women that go through these different little transitions in our lives, whether that's our kids going to school or we're having a shift in our work or our focus or whatever. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about like best first steps for time management when you're in like a transitional season in your life, and
Mhm.
what are things that really could be helpful for someone like me or for the listener who really is like recalibrating on this is how I've been conditioned or this is how I was living, and now I really want to kind of step into this new season for me and recalibrate on how I use my time.
Yeah, they're so good. And I think first thing is identifying your personality type. So for me, I'm an over high achiever, teacher's pet. Like if you give it to me, it'll be done tomorrow. Like that is me. But that means every time I sign up for a course or give myself a mission, I expect it to be done by Friday, which is not realistic in anyone's means, right? So then
Yeah,
all of a sudden we say we have 7 to 8 hours, but then we end up working 12 hours because we still got to work. The business is so important. Like I can't unplug when the kids get home from school. I got to keep working. And
right.
that's again, that's part of that lie and the culture belief that we have to do it all and there's never enough. But I think if you can just give yourself so much grace and patience and identify, okay, I'm in a transition season. Let me double the time that I think I need to do this so that I'm not rushing all the time. Because that's
Yeah,
one of the biggest stressors I have. If I'm always feeling like, gotta go, hurry, 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 it just builds the anxiety so that anytime I'm distracted or get set back, I start to get these irritants. And then I turn into like this evil, snappy mom and wife that no one wants to be around.
totally.
And they don't know what's in our heads, right? This forever to-do list, and they don't realize that we're falling behind. And so when we can let go of those expectations, and maybe instead of the 15 things to do today, we give ourselves 3. So the
Yeah,
first thing that I do when I sit down to my desk, I write out all 15 or 20 things I need to do. But if I can just get 3 done within the first 2 hours, I've won for the day. Anything
right.
else is extra credit, and I can really celebrate that. And I can take the extra hour lunch. That's another piece of advice I have is don't eat at your desk. Like you deserve to unplug, put the phone down, go turn on music or go for a walk. It's really easy when you're building a business to get so sucked in that we get like attached by the hip to our computers. So just double the time it's going to take to get everything done, knowing that it will get done. And if you have that extra time, great, you can fill in the gaps, but don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah,
It's just so easy to fall into that trap. Yeah.
yeah. Really is easy to fall into that trap.
Hmm.
And I know I do. And I know a lot of other entrepreneurs are really just women that are called to serve in some
Yeah.
capacity fall into that trap. And so I appreciate you kind of thinking through or walking us through like what would it look like to just make a small step towards time management in your day? Like
Hmm.
how do you actually focus in and set yourself up for success? Like
Yeah.
you said, making that list of 20, but then choosing 3 to focus on, that
Hmm.
matters for how we feel in our day to day, setting ourselves up for
Yep.
success, intentionally finding where are we spending time and energy, and thinking about what are the things that really need my priority and attention right now as I start the day or as I start the week, and
Hmm.
then checking them off as you're moving forward through all of the tasks. I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful. And I love that feedback. Marina, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about alignment of business goals and alignment with family goals. I
Hmm.
know obviously you talk a lot about work life, mom life, and balancing that or trying to come to a place of feeling
Yeah.
like you're managing both. You also talk a lot about time management and the work you do with multiple businesses. So I'd love for you
Hmm.
to talk about, what have you considered in your own journey and what do you talk to other women about when it comes to assessing how you align family and business in a way that feels really good?
Yeah, I'll say first thing is they're not separate. They're one and the same. And that's a big shift we have to make, especially coming from a nuclear point of view as Americans. It's everything. It's like leave the family, go start your own thing, right? And this is something from the book called Take Back Your Family by Jefferson Bethke. I highly recommend. I read this in 2020. And it talks about family mission and values. And so even though it's my business, I'm on the LLC. It affects everybody under my roof, right? And so it can't be like, well, Marina's going to go sell 50 houses this year and you guys are on your own. That's not
Right,
how this works,
right,
It
right,
means
right.
everything costs something. So it means, are we okay with mommy working extra these next couple months so that we can go to Disneyland? Or are we okay if XYZ and maybe my 9-year-old comes and does door hangers with me and we're going to do some projects together? And so there's so much that kids and our spouses can help us with if we want them to. And I really think we should try to integrate them both. And that way, too, it's not like I'm just in my world and nobody gets me, but I'm actually talking about work at the dinner table. I'm saying, guess what mommy did today? I got to help Mr. and Mrs. Smith down the street get their home ready for sale. They're getting ready to retire or whatever. And they get to understand why I do and why it's important.
Yeah,
And so just recognizing they're one and the same, but everybody has to be in agreement. I can't just decide I'm going to have a 6-figure year and you guys are on your own. That's not how that works. So husband has to be on board. Kids should be mutually, at least on page and understanding, recognizing what's going on so that
yeah.
there's not those like pent up resentments happening either about the time balance.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest challenge, the time balance.
Hmm.
Love for you to maybe talk about a season where that felt harder and what did you maybe do to kind of get through that or move yourself out of that harder season into a place where you felt a little bit more balanced?
That was definitely 2021 to 2022. So 2021 was year one of business, right? But I felt like I had sacrificed my daughter's first year of life basically to work on building this business. And
Yeah.
I have regrets about that now. That's time you don't ever get back, especially in the infant phase. They just change so fast. I
Yeah.
don't have the same emotional connection as when I did with my son, to be honest, because I was so mentally in the business that it was like feed the baby, then hand it back to daddy. It was just like so different.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that every day is the same. Even for you with older kids, we know they're only going to be 5 once. They're only going to be 6 once. And when they come home, all they want is our attention. So
Yeah.
realizing that present parent is more important than any of our achievements can help give permission to just be present and do less, a little bit less. It just means when we go into work mode though, when you're time blocking and stuff, I'm fully present so I can get this shit done so I can go be full mom mode. I'm not having to multitask all the time.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely huge. And the way I got out of it was just looking at my life and being like, this is not the mom I want to be. This is not the mom I want to show up as. I don't want my kids to think of me as this way and always prioritizing work over them. I want
Right.
them to feel like when I'm with them, I'm with them.
Yeah. And that's so powerful. It's such
Hmm.
a good reminder for all of us, this concept of it's so good to have goals. It's so powerful to have a mission and to want to impact and build an income and obviously set up legacy for your family and help others around you. All of that is so powerful and so important in our life when it comes to purpose and where we're going. But at the end of the day, it really has to be about your own family unit and really paying attention to how can I be present and how can I make sure that I'm focusing the time and energy that these people right here deserve
Hmm.
out of me in my life because I mean doing what we're doing is for our families
Yeah.
and doing what we're doing is really for the legacy that we're hoping to build for them. And
Hmm.
so I love that you spoke on that and really talked about how you really had to evaluate and take some moments to self-reflect and say, is this really
Yeah.
who I want to be? Is this what I want this to feel like? And I
Hmm.
think that in that evaluation of success and the evaluation of how you want to show up in your life, like it all comes down to how do you feel?
Yeah.
Not maybe what it looks like, not
Hmm.
maybe what you've achieved, but how does it all feel?
Yeah. 'Cause we know.
Marina, I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about the self care side. So, I am extremely passionate about health and wellness here on Empowered
Yeah.
and Health. We talk all about inside out health, mental health, emotional health. How are we taking care of our physical body? Why
Hmm.
that matters for how we show up in our days and how we're able to really fuel our passions and so much more. So, I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about your self care process and what it's meant for you when it comes to building a business and how you actually work to take care of you and what you need.
Yeah, and I'll say it's an ever evolving journey, and I think we know this that what worked last year isn't going to work this year, and our bodies are continuing to change, etc. And I think for me, the biggest thing is again getting time alone to think and feel. How do I actually feel? Not just what are the symptoms, but like go into the root of it and what's actually causing this feeling. Is it something that I did? Is it something that someone else did? And just having time to reflect. And usually that means quiet time without a podcast, without music, like just solitude, time to listen. And that is so hard to do in today's time and age. But
Yeah.
once you kind of identify some of those things, and for me, I'm like I said, I'm one of those overachievers. So I'm working out, I'm eating healthy. And then I started to notice I still can't shake the baby weight. Like something is off. And I don't know what that is. I've invested in a personal trainer, etc. So I actually went to a holistic doctor in the last 6 months or so. We did a full hormone panel, full blood panel. Turns out my cortisol is really low, which was a head scratcher. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, why am I sweating every morning? Literally beads of sweat, and it's not that hot, right? And she's like,
Right.
well, it's because it's turning into adrenaline. And I'm like, what? And then also finding out you can have a metabolic shelf line that you can't get off of. You can't shake it. So we might have to have some fasting come in. It's just all these things. I'm 36 now. I've never heard about this before my entire life. This isn't
Yeah.
something that PCP will tell you. They just tell you the symptom and then here's some meds. This is
Right.
a root issue. So we just started last week a routine of new vitamins and stuff that we're adding in. So I'm excited. It's an 8-week trial period. But if you know something isn't right, you got to go out and get the help. And then the other thing too is so much of it is like relational. And so just realizing it's really easy to be lonely as an entrepreneur. So on the self-care side, I'll start to notice if I'm starting to get those feelings where I'm living in comparison and I'm having more time online than I am in real life. I need to pull myself out and go have coffee, go to a movie with a friend, do something outside of the house. but just being aware. Awareness is number one, and then making sure I'm doing intentional fun time. So one of the other things I like to do for self-care is actually playing the piano. I have a digital piano in my office and then a big one in the living room. But I'm not an expert, like I literally plunk around. I'd say I'm like intermediate level, but it gives me so much joy, and it can take 10 minutes, it can take 15 minutes or an hour if I want it to. But
Yeah.
I have freedom to do that. So again, if I check off that to-do list and I've got the crock pot going for dinner, I've got some positive margin, I'm playing freaking piano. And so
Yeah.
making priority for your fun time is really important as moms.
That's so good because it really is true. We don't do that enough. And so often we get into this space of not even really understanding exactly why we may feel run down, burned out, like our cup is empty.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really that mental awareness or that self awareness of saying, what have I done for myself that actually is fun? What is the thing that I can do to really fill my cup in a way that's unique to me, whether that's a creative outlet like piano,
Yeah.
or moving your body, or seeing a friend, or going out with your husband or partner or whatever. Those things really do matter. And I
Mhm.
love that you're speaking on relational health because it's one of those components to wellness that we don't always remember is
Yeah.
part of self-care. It's so multidimensional, and
Yeah.
it's such a powerful reminder for us to remember like those things are also part of our health story. And
Yeah.
especially when we're in an entrepreneurial seat, or we're doing things oftentimes where we're in our homes, or we're working one to one or behind the scenes,
Mhm.
we have to take that step to say, but how have I filled my cup in this relational way, in a connection way in real life, in
Yeah.
order to really help myself feel energized? And so I love that, Marina. That's such a powerful reminder, and I super
Yeah.
appreciate your perspective on that. We're going to slowly start to get into a wrap up here, but I'd love for you to think a little bit about your younger self when you think about the topics that you teach on now, the topics that you're passionate about now, speaking on boundaries and time management, really taking a moment to define success for yourself and think about boundaries, like all of those things. What would you say to your younger self, or what is something that you wish that you maybe would have known even 5 years ago that you know now when it comes to just achieving this sense of fulfillment and balance that you maybe didn't have in the past?
Yeah, I think it definitely goes back to seasons and patience. I just feel like I spent the last 10 years being hurried. Honestly, gotta have it now, gotta have it tomorrow. There's not enough time. I'm behind. I'm constantly feeling behind. If I could go back to my 26-year-old self, I was newly married. I think we were just getting pregnant, if I'm not, I don't recall. But it was all about achievement. That was my fulfillment, was an achievement, because that's what social media told me success was.
Yeah.
When in reality, I wish I understood at 26, we still have 60 plus years of our life left. I can have 30 careers if I want in that time based on today. It's like every 2 years we're going to have a new business. But at that time, I was so wrapped into my identity is what I do. And that is not who I am, right? Instead, it's the gifts and the talents that I've been given that I can use in any capacity of business, not just one role. And so, if I could understand that my 20s are meant for experimenting and for testing and for trying, and that eventually I'll find my thing, but my thing doesn't have to be in my 20s, because I was just so fixated on that. And just seeing the people who have been around at their careers for 30 years and they're on all these magazines. So surely I have to be in the business for 30 years. And so that means I'm behind. And so just
Right.
all these things, these comparisons. And I think your 20s, that's part of developmentally where we're at anyways, is in this rat race, right? We're trying to figure this out. But if you recognize and relax that it is a trial and experimentation phase, that you will figure it out. I get it now why they say people in their 30s are their happiest. It's because we don't care as much, because we've kind of gone through the BS, but realizing you have to go through the BS to get there. So just instead of feeling like we don't got it together, just accept that you don't have it together.
Yeah. Just
That's
accept
a big one.
Yeah, just accept it. Yeah, and you're so right. Like you have to go through it oftentimes to learn it.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, which I'm going to recap, which is your purpose is not what you do, it's
Mhm.
who you it's
Yeah.
who you are. And the definition of relevance and how much you matter and how much you're loved is not what you do, it's
Yeah.
who you are. And that is just tremendous, not only for women that are entrepreneurs or working in business, but that is tremendous for women,
Mhm.
especially in motherhood,
Yeah.
because I talk to women all the time who have that mental battle inside of, if I'm not doing this, this, and this, then I'm
Mhm.
not worthy, or I'm not relevant, or I don't matter.
Yeah.
And I think that can be really real, especially in motherhood, because there's so much that we do that's mundane and unseen
Mhm.
and unheard of and not celebrated. And so it's got to be this mindset shift of staying grounded in it's
Yeah.
not what you're doing, it's who
Mhm.
you are.
Yeah.
And that is an incredibly powerful piece to remember really in every aspect of our journey. So I'm so grateful, Marina, for you sharing that.
Yeah.
One other quick question before we fully wrap up here. I talk a lot about health and wellness here. I'm super passionate about mental health. And so one of the things that I always ask people that come on the podcast is this concept of sharing our stories. Why is that so powerful, not only for entrepreneurs and moms and other women? Why do you feel like really sharing about what's working for us, what we've learned about, and our personal stories? How is that so important for other women that may be listening to this?
It totally goes back to the loneliness factor. So that's why I started my podcast, the Work Like a Mother podcast, because I was like, surely I'm not the only one having these feelings. And I've listened to so many female based business podcasts, but they're all talking about achieving, still. I got to get off that rat race. I want to talk to people who are in it and actually all the scary thoughts that we go through. Let's talk about the real. And so it's relational. It's saying you're not alone, because we always feel surely I'm the only one having this problem, when that's a complete falsity. And it's going, actually, entrepreneurship is really, really hard. It's a mind F. Motherhood is really, really hard. It's a mind F. We need the community to be like, actually, this is normal. And you're just watching some perfection online telling you that it's not supposed to be that way. But in
Right.
reality, we live with messy houses and sinks full of dishes, and that's part of life. There's no expectation to have it any other way. If you do, you're the odd one out.
Yeah.
And so talking about that, talking about finances, surely I'm the only one having this panic attack about taxes. No, we all go through this. It's just
Yeah.
normalizing the mundane is absolutely part of the storytelling. And I just think there's so many lessons that we go through, and we're not meant to keep them to ourselves. We're meant to share them to help the next sister be after us, like that's the whole point of life. So I'm part of a group of women right now who meet once a week, and that's literally what we do. There are a bunch of young moms with babies, and I have the older kids, 4 and 9. So I'm kind of like the auntie in the group, and I just get to encourage and inspire them every week with whatever they're going through. And it's been so rewarding to just share life. It's absolutely so important.
That is so good. And you're right. It's so important. Sharing our stories at the end of the day is what connects us.
Yeah.
And like you said, like helps the next woman, helps the next person just feel we can normalize some of the things in life that are not glamorous, that aren't
Yeah.
always shared outwardly, especially online. And I just appreciate you, Marina. Love your perspective, love what you're doing, and really appreciate everything that you shared today on today's episode. I'd love to get into closing here and talk a little bit about your quote. And so this is something that I ask everyone that also comes on the podcast, share a favorite quote, a favorite mindset mantra, or something that reminds you personally about the importance of nurturing yourself
Yeah.
amongst all the things that you manage in your day to day.
Yeah. So it's from the Bible. It's Matthew 11:28, and I always like the Passion Translation. But it just says, "Are you weary, carrying a heavy burden? Come to me, and I will refresh your life, for I am your oasis." And the reason this is so important for me, it's because I just constantly, when I'm stressed, I realize I'm trying to do it all by myself constantly. It's my thing, and it's my responsibility, and I have to control everything. That's where the stressor is coming from. When I can learn to let that go and realize it's actually out of my control, I'm just a little human, a speck on this earth. And he could tell me tomorrow to shut down my business. Do I have the obedience to obey that and trust that it'll all work out?
Yeah.
Once we do that, there's an instant lift that comes off of me if I can let those cares go every single day. So that's a verse I love to come back to and just get reminded of, like, he will refill me. And if you guys haven't discovered that, I definitely encourage you to just go on your own spiritual journey and figure it out on your own. I really believe that it's not a lack of faith, it's just a lack of research. So there's so much out there and so many resources. So that's a good
So
one.
many resources. I love that. That is such a great quote, such a great piece from the Bible, and something I super appreciate too, Marina. Your perspective has been so powerful today, and I can't thank you enough. Really quickly before we wrap it up all the way, would love for you to share, how can people find you? How can people connect with you? Or if someone's interested in learning more about what you do and the work you do, or how they may be able to even work with you, how can they connect?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram pretty daily. It's Marina T Tolentino with an underscore. And then I just am starting to reboost my TikTok, which is Marina T Tolentino. We're going to get into this for the next 3 months and kind of go hard on it.
Love it.
TikTok's my fun space, so I play over there a lot. And then the website is marinatolentino.com, has the podcast on there, has mentorship. And I'm just here to be a resource. Honestly, that's what it is. So when I mentor other women entrepreneurs, we just meet once a week and we're saying, what is your biggest problem right now? Let's solve it immediately. It's not some loop-de-loopy coaching in circles. I'm going to give you real advice and put it into practice that week. So I love seeing the needle move for people everywhere across the nation. It's been super fun.
That's so great, Marina. Thank you so much for sharing your heart. If you want to connect with Marina, make sure you go to the show notes to get connected to all of her information related to her website, connecting on social, and more. Thank you guys for tuning in today. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Marina.